You get the tension. Really.
Okay. And would you say, as you push against it, your handle goes forward? Was the pressure there now? Were you feeling things? Feeling right hand against the shaft? Yeah, maybe right index finger against the shaft. Yeah. You look at your hips, how open your hips are. Yeah. You feel like your chest is a little bit more open. Dress. Square hips, square shoulders. Push against it. Everything's open up. So the body's definitely open at impact. Yeah. Certainly hips are going to be 30 to 40 degrees open. I would say chest is going to be maybe 50 open. Certainly not going to be square. Might look square because his shoulders fall. But the actual chest is open. You feel like you're pushing with this rather than just driving that right arm at it. Yeah. So again, do that again. Keep getting that feel. There you go. Not so you there's a little bit of push up from there. You could push up as hard as you wanted from there through impact, but you're not pushing up excessively too soon. Yeah. Again, do that again a few times. Now, if I was to move that barrel out of the way, just stay where you are. All right. If I can start again on this one, go back to settle. You're going to push against this really hard, then I'm going to move this out of the way. Now, as I move this out of the way, let everything go through. All right. So the hands went low and left. They didn't go like this, did they? No. Yeah. You turned that corner down at the bottom, didn't it? Okay. Run that through one more time for me, please, Peter. So extend, keeping the arms on the rib cage. Load 2, add 3, 1 and 4. Put some side bend in. Okay, do that one more time. And then on this one, just make a swing for me. So set up. Take your rest position. And just make a backswing. Try and get that same feeling at the top that you just had. Superb. Yeah. So what was the difference between you doing that move that you just made? So that was one continuous loading sequence, yeah? So you went from P1 to P4 by loading your accumulators, turning, tilting, extending. We've not put the risk conditions in yet. Previously, that's what you were doing, but you were doing it in a completely different sequence. I would say the accumulators were traveling and loading for longer. Yeah, you were relying a little bit too much on the loading of the accumulators to get to P4, rather than, and the continuous loading of the accumulators, particularly 1 and 4, rather than loading them by P3 and then propelling them courtesy of the torso, the turning, the tilting, the extending. Yeah. So what I'm going to do now with you, I want to do the exercise once, and then a continuous swing to the top once, and try and start pinpointing some differences or similarities. They might not be, it might feel exactly the same to you. So loading 2, adding 3, 1 and 4 with the turn, and then put some side bend in. Brilliant. And then P1 to P4 continuous on this one. Excellent. So what you've done now is at P6, you've gone into the ground a little bit more. So previously, club would be dropping behind you, head would be coming up, hips would be tucking under, and then it would be this huge sort of roll through the hip, wouldn't it? Yeah. So we're not going down that far. We're going up very early to prevent this club and this radius that's widening, bottoming out behind the ball. Yeah. Well, now we're much more like this at P6, going into the ground a little bit more. At P7 impact, we're more like this. Shaft forward, lead wrist firm, more flex in the knee, particularly the lead knee. Okay. Now, if we stay in that position, so we've gone in transition, we've gone into the ground. Yeah. There's a vertical force this way. If we stay there too long, the club's going to drive itself into the ground like this. So we have to offset that through impact by pushing up with the knees as you push up with the knees, the pelvis comes out of its forward bend, which allows you to continue turning, yeah, which allows the hands to stay more passive. If we keep the flex in the knees, it restricts the ability to turn when we start looking like this, and at some point the hands will have to kick in again. Yeah. So that raising of the belt, if you watch DVDs and books, etc., that's what it refers to. It refers to the sensation that you get coming through impact, which you can start to get whilst doing this drill. So the better you get at keeping this cane off your side, the quieter the hands become, the more you'll start to learn to push up to facilitate that rotation that you can put. So you've got to keep turning to calm the hands down. And I mentioned to you, and I'll do it towards the camera so you've got it, I mentioned to you about the wrist conditions coming through. Previously we've been very much sort of like this, do impact, yeah? Keeping the cane off the side, we want to be more this way, so lead wrist high, club end a little bit lower perhaps. Toe end of the club is still pointing sort of more skywards, yeah? Back of the glove this way, so you've actually traced the arc. And the club face, if anything, is closing slightly to the arc. That's what gives you that draw shot. Yeah. Doing it this way is going to produce a club face that's too open. It's going to present the neck, but unfortunately, a lot of people think this is the cure for this, and it isn't. What we want is more on the way through. So just keep the cane off the side. You don't need to manipulate this way too much.
That's what causes the shank.
Yeah, that for you, that's definitely what causes the shank. Club face comes in, opens up quickly, heel gets pushed out towards the ball. Yeah. So that's your raising of the hips through the shot. This is just a session from this morning with a player who historically was right shifted. It's not a distance exercise, he's just hitting some drivers off the deck, and the 12 shots that he's hit all demonstrate the same sort of predictable pattern, certainly not stuck underneath it and hooking. And the one thing I wanted to highlight here was the angle of attack. It's been put to me that driver off the ground or driver off the deck as a practice drill will create too steep an angle of attack. And if we go through the 12 shots that this player hit, we can see that the angle of attack is certainly not excessively up, but it's certainly not excessively down. If the player was to attack the ball with an excessively steep angle of attack, he wouldn't get the ball airborne. So it's a task-driven exercise to prevent this player from getting too right shifted. If we have a little look at the geometry from above, and bear in mind this player is aiming left of the cane at the front of the studio, so he's already shifted slightly left of where the monitor is pointing. And you can see on these swings that he's generally getting a feel for what it's like to operate on the other side of the spectrum. His historic issue would be club tumbling in behind him, dropping underneath the hands, losing control of the club face. Club face would drop open. You can see that the club face does still tend to stay relatively open to the path. But this was an exercise in just getting away from this severely right shifted, excessively shallow angle of attack that this player was demonstrating. When he hits it his worst off the tee, the angle of attack is about anywhere between 4 to 6 up, and as a result he has to shift it maybe 8 to the right, shift the swing direction 8 to the right to get anything like a sort of decent draw. And the issue is that in the act of doing that, the player will early extend, load accumulator 3 a little bit too much, and completely lose control of the club face. So he goes from, in an attempt to try and create a predictable pattern, what he ends up with is an uncontrollable block to the right or a quick hook to the left. So anybody stuck under it, anybody feeling that they've got to right shift excessively to hit fairways, a good little drill for you. And I just wanted to clear up that myth about the angle of attack. Remember, it's task driven, it's not about distance, it's about creating some different feels, allowing the player to operate on the other side of the spectrum, so left shifted rather than right shifted, to achieve a nice balanced result when he goes out to play. No use of this player practicing just being a little bit shifted to the right. This player's got to get way to the left. or a little bit to the left at least, in order to improve his game long term.
Too much of that, I can't, because I'll never do it.
You're not going to overdo it. So if you take your setup for me now, please, Stu. Now, if you show me the sort of old move that you used to make.
The old move, would have been that.
Okay. And when you were doing that, the club was rolling behind you, wasn't it? The arms were going out, the club was coming in. So down the line, that was looking like this.
Yeah.
Okay, so show me the new move. And we know, because we've looked at it on video, that now the hands don't come out, the club doesn't roll in. The hands come in and the club stays out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay, so you set yourself up again. When we did that sort of exercise and we filmed this down the line, we had a chat about rolling it and what effect it had. Set yourself up. Take this back now and we feel like the back of the gloved hand, there's no rotation of it whatsoever. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Okay? So the left shoulder now is working down, isn't it?
Yeah.
As a consequence of what you're doing with the back of your left hand. And that's key for you. You see the difference. So that's sometimes shoulder down may be a good cue for you to start your backswing.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah. Sometimes, so this with the same fundamental move, but you might get a different feel. So one feel to have a good takeaway would be shoulder down. But in order for my shoulder to move down, my knees have got to change flex.
Yeah. So
another key might be left knee, adding flex to the left knee, almost like your left knee's working or flexing down your left foot as well.
Yeah.
So as your left knee flexes,
here as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, right shoulder works a little bit higher. One guy I was working with the other day, his initial move was in his takeaway, instead of this, his feel was that his left ear was going to point down to the ground quickly. And in order to do that, he had to drop his left shoulder. He had to change the flex in his knee, left knee in particular. Right knee then straightens as well.
Yeah.
But another player, it might be the back of the glove. Yeah. Zero rotation of the back of the left hand. So there's no right and wrong way of doing it. But as you're working on that, the feels, you need to, you know the move, don't be frightened of introducing a new feel. As long as you stick to the same fundamental move of, hands in, club out, shoulder down, you'll get different feels at different stages. They'll not always be the same feel. More of your striker scenario where handle's a little bit higher, radius a little bit wider coming into it, doesn't require that much of an overtaking, if any, flatter left wrist coming through the ball, and really all that requires is you to keep that body moving. Yeah. You're going to be shallower, the club's not overtaking the hands, so the speed's easier to regulate, but when you're trying to play different shots, you then need to use obviously different wedges to give you different trajectories. You still use little minor ball position adjustments. Yeah. And you might open the face a little bit or put the ball back a little bit, be what it may. But you're not going to make as many adjustments and the variables won't be as dramatic as the guy who's been a little bit more flamboyant, a little bit more of a tighter radius overtaking. Yeah. Both ways work. Both ways are demonstrated by you see any number of different ways of chipping demonstrated by the world's top players. But with yourself, I think if we can just sort of get those wrist conditions that we want locked in, so that you've got relatively high handle, left wrist relatively flat, keep that flat left wrist in there. That's going to give you, the thing you've got to bear in mind with that is when you're chipping, generally speaking, you're going to get a relatively shallow angle of attack every single shot. So when you're in a bit of a deep rough lie or the ball sat down a little bit, you then need to consider your ball position a little bit more. Right. You do then need to get a little bit more of a steep angle of attack, whereas the guy who is setting the wrists a little bit more, coming a little bit tighter, if he keeps the wrist angle in there, he can produce a steeper angle of attack. For a standard shot, you'd have to get rid of the wrist angles a little bit more whilst keeping the body moving. So it gives him a little bit more variation. But at club level, we don't necessarily need that much variation, do we? We just want a standard shot initially that we can rely on and that allows us to, like I said, explain what's going on a little bit more clearly. So, right, it landed too far up, ran on a little bit too far because my speeds were a little bit too high. So it's like everything's locked in, and then we're just going to use the body rotation to speed things up or slow things down. Your length of swing as well plays a part. But what we don't necessarily need is other variations that, we've not quite regained the wrist action that we wanted, or demonstrated the wrist action that we wanted, or we've not quite recovered the shaft enough, or we've recovered it a little bit too much, and then all of a sudden, because we're not practicing the short game for hours, what we gain with a little bit of, a little bit more versatility, we lose with just consistency. We just want a basic shot that's going to get the job done for you.
I think that was the thing. If you're doing it hours a day, I can understand. For me, I mean, and I do practice it, but I found that at least that sort of gave me. Before, I'd be thinking speed of body, speed of that. So, and if you got that right, you might get that wrong.
The top players have to have that many shots in their armoury, don't they?
Yeah.
That said, Steve Stricker's got a lot of shots in his armoury, but he's not got as many shots as say Mickelson and Tiger Woods have got.
Yeah.
But he's got enough to get by. Yeah, he still wins from Boberton, doesn't he? So we don't necessarily need to be as flamboyant. So we've got relatively flat wrist and set up, trying to keep that condition in there, a little bit more passive with the hands. And it just becomes easier to police from your point of view then. I'm going to cheat a bit now. I'm going to get you to do one more. So go on, set yourself up. P4 and stop. The sequence now is from 4 to 5.5, put your flexion in. And then from 5.5 to 7, extend with a low body. Okay, do that one more time. Back into flexion, extend the lower body. Now this time, I want you to go to 5.5 into flexion, okay? And I'm going to ask you to do something. So P4 to P5.5, getting back into flexion. Now keep the flex in your lead leg and shallow out your angle of attack. You should be really good at doing that. There you go. What did you do? Pull your chest away from the ball, yeah? So do it the correct way now. Back into flexion, push up out of the ground, that's it. Okay? So you've got the feeling on something, is that right? So you bend forward, and then you can extend, side bend, extend, side bend, extend, side bend, extend, side bend. You create some turn. Now you might add a little bit of turn to that, and what sort of shot you play. But the extending and the side bending, which needs to be done together, offset one another, is creating some turn. All you do is turn. So that means late in the swing, you're going to have to, which we see a lot of players make that sort of rolling move almost. So it's that feeling of extending and side bending. It's putting some turn in there. If you just focus heavily on your turn, there's no extension or side bend on it. No. So the three things that you need to do, focusing on the two that are done the least, probably a double worst, creates that third one anyway. If you just focus on the one that everybody does, which is turn, you don't do the other two, which are essential. So to turn in a circle on a tilted angle, you've got to be doing those three things. Extending, turning, side bending, extending, turning and side bending.